Titanic Plum Porter.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. One from England today, and it is the Titanic Plum Porter. Some of you may have come across this before. This was, at one point, I do remember this being a regular at the Wetherspoons. And I'm talking about Wetherspoons in London. I'm not sure whether Wetherspoons up north, I would imagine so, because this brewery come from Stoke-on-Trent, so possibly Midlands up towards Manchester in the Wetherspoons. You may have seen this before. It's one that I have tried in the past. Why I did it, I don't know. I was drinking Guinness at the time, and for some reason I think the Guinness was off. Can you imagine that? They had run out of Guinness in the Wetherspoons in London, and the only alternative was some of this Titanic Plum Porter. It's so long ago, and it was a messy night, I don't remember it. However, I've decided to give it another go. Now, I've done a video on the history of Porter and Stout. If you want to watch it, it's on the channel. Please look it up. There's a few myths around Porter, and there's a really good beer blogger. And if you're watching this, I assume you like your beers. But there's a blogger, and he's written books, and I have shamelessly stolen information from him in the past, and I do apologise. For the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he does a blog called Shut Up About Barclay Perkins. There is an absolute goldmine of information on that site, so if you're really into your beer history, have a look at that. He has got brew sheets, he has got price lists going back to the early turn of the century, early 1900s. Early turn of the century doesn't make sense, does it? As opposed to the late turn of the century. He's got loads of information on there. Where he gets his info from, I don't know, but it's all 100% legit, and he knows his beer, believe me. He's got a very good, in my opinion, a very good sort of ethos on beer and his philosophy on beer. It's what I like, so that's well worth checking out. But point I'm making about him is that I think it might have been, was it yesterday or today? I can't remember. Fairly recently, he made a comment on a YouTube video, and somebody tried to tell him the history of Porter and said Porter came about because of when they were roasting malts. Some of the malts got burnt and they couldn't use them, so they just threw it into a mash, made really cheap beer. And because he said sailors were porters, which isn't true. The sailors were porters, and they would buy this cheap beer, and it became popular. It's just absolute fucking nonsense. If you really want to look at the history of Porter, and I'm sure I must have got a few things wrong in it, but I haven't been told otherwise by anybody. But there's a history of Porter on my channel, and I'm not trying to say I know everything about Porter. I am always willing to learn, as long as the information you're giving me is correct. But there's a history of Stout and Porter on there. It's quite fascinating. The division between Stout and Porter, it's in this day and age, I really can't tell the difference. If somebody can, then they are a better man than I. Yes, there are historical differences. The terminology for Porter was usually a lower ABV beer. Stout would mean that the beer was slightly higher and stronger in ABV. The inference was that if you were working, you would drink Porter, hence the name Porter. It became popular with the London porters who would drink this in their lunch hour, and usually market porters or whatever. And you would have Stout, especially Irish Stout. I mean, that's another complete book of mystery, that is. But you get Stout and Porter, and if people really want to be picky about it, no, Guinness wasn't the first to brew stout. Stout was already around, and again, stout is just a terminology. But there you go. I'm not going to go into it here. I've gone into it on that video, so if you want to look it up, please do. This is a brewery that have been based in Stoke-on-Trent, in a place called Burslem, and they've been going since 1985. I've only tried one, or I've only reviewed one of their other beers. It was I think it was over a pale ale or an IPA. Really wasn't impressed with this. For the life of me, I cannot remember what this tasted like on tap in the Wetherspoons. So this is, I wouldn't say a revisiting video. This is going to be a new one for me because I honestly cannot remember anything about it. But there you go. Let's investigate. .500ml bottle, 4.9%, plum porter, fruity, red and deep. That's what it says. If you had suggested our best-selling and multi-award-winning beer would be dark, fruit-flavoured and 4.9% ABV 3 years ago, we would have said you were mad. That was before our brewers really understood the dark, fruity arts. Yeah, it's popular, and I can see why it's popular. You know, if the Wetherspoon have decided to take it on, they're normally pretty good when it comes to these ales. They do go in for these local ales, and if they take off locally, they do tend to stock them nationally as well. There's a tasting notes there. I'm not even going to look at them. I want to get my own view on it. Ingredients: water, malted barley, wheat, malt, hops, natural plum flavouring and yeast. And the malts are Maris Otter, Pearl, wheat, dark crystal malt. Sorry, that's going to give you the sweetness. Maris Otter as well. Yeah, nice. Hops: Pilgrim, Hercules, Goldings and Celia. Interesting. They've used quite a few hops in there. Now, in my opinion, porter and stout should be more about the malt, but they've put a lot of hops in there. This will be an interesting one. So let's get it open and let's see what's going on. Right. Now, I've been sat here for a while doing various things on the computer, and there's a cap if you want to have a look. There you go. And this has got down to cellar temperature. Come out the fridge, it's at cellar temperature now. So let's get it into a ye olde glass. Wow, car! I've just got a whiff of plum. You've got to be careful when you say plums. God, that is really strong. That plum flavour is huge. And it's a little bit overpowering. And it smells a little bit sweet and a little bit artificial. Now I'm wondering what sort, it says natural plum flavouring. What is that? It's just plums. That's what. Now, I'm sure if there's any ex-servicemen there, they will tell you plums has a different meaning. But it's like, it's like fresh plum damson. No, it's not. It is definitely plum. And that's all I'm getting, really. There's a faint whiff of malt, but it's just dominated by sweet plum flavour. Not sure about this. Let's dig in and let's see what's going on. Bottoms up. Okay, I sort of get what they're doing here. Right, the aroma is just, as I say, just sweet fruit, sweet dark fruit, plums, basically. The flavour, you're getting a lot more of the roasted malt on that, and there's a bitterness to it as well. Now the aroma is very sweet, to the point where I'm sort of thinking, or I was thinking, have they put some sort of syrup, plum syrup into that to flavour it? You know, like plum, if you can imagine plum cordial, if that's what they've used. But the flavour is, it's bringing forward a little bit more of the malt character, a bit more of the roasted malt character, I should say. And there's a little bit of hop bitterness, but it doesn't taste like American hops, and there isn't really any American hops in there. What do they say the hops are again? Pilgrim? Well, that's a British hop. Hercules, German hop variety, Goldings and Celiac. And it actually isn't too bad. It is not the worst. It's very full-bodied. That would be the wheat. And again, you know, you compare that to Guinness. Would you believe Guinness is one of the lowest calorie beers on the market today? That astounded me. I found that fact out the other day. The body on this is quite rich, quite big. There is a plum flavour going all the way through it. It's not too sweet because it's being balanced out by the roasted malt and them hops as well. And I have to say, it isn't bad. Quite nice. However, you could see yourself, if you try to session this, you could see yourself getting a little bit tired of it. It's not like Guinness. The beauty of Guinness is, when you try stuff like this and you compare it to Guinness, the beauty of Guinness is it's quite weak-bodied. Now, compared to lager and all your bitters and all that, yeah, it has got a bit of a body to it, but not much more. I think it's the nitro that gives it that smooth, velvety texture. But underneath, Guinness is very drinkable, very sessionable, low ABV as well. It's lower than this. So that's why it's so drinkable. But this ain't bad. However, I could see myself getting a little bit tired of that plum flavour. One or two of them, however, yeah, really nice. There's a little sweet aftertaste on this of sweet plum. You are getting the bitterness from the roasted malt as well, which is nice. So yeah, all in all, that is not bad, but just be wary of buying too many of these because I don't think you could session it. So what's the verdict on Titanic Plum Porter? Yeah, not bad and nicer than I expected. And the reason being is because I tried their pale ale. You can look that up on the channel if you want. I didn't think much of it. I was really underwhelmed by that. But this is quite nice. Very full-bodied, I will say that. Yes, it has got that fruity damson plum type flavour to it, and the aroma will really knock you for six. It smells artificial, like it's been flavoured with some sort of syrup, plum syrup or whatever, but the flavour when you drink it, very well balanced, very full bodied as well, and I quite like it. My only gripe is that it would be a little bit too much for me, and this is just a personal thing. You know, if you like sweet porters and sweet stouts, you may be able to drink a lot more, but for me this sweetness in it would get a little bit too much, I think. And the more you drink, the bigger that sweetness gets. Yes, there is the roasted malt in there, but there's a cloying stickiness to it, sugar, sweet stickiness to it that sort of dominates afterwards. But it isn't bad. Certainly go well with a stew or something like that. I could quite easily drink a couple of these, no problem at all. 3 or 4, I'd be really pushing it. But it ain't bad. I'm going to give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. I was going to give it an 8, but the sweetness, and I've only got halfway down there, the sweetness I think would be a little bit too much for me after 2 pints, and I'm quite sensitive to that. Now, I do like a bit of invert sugar in British beers. It's not as in your face as that. That is, yeah, that, I wouldn't say it smells, I wouldn't say it tastes artificial, but it puts you in mind of an artificial style. And they say it's naturally flavoured. Yeah, maybe with concentrate. I think that's what's in here. But yeah, all in all, not too bad at all. For the price, you know, if you get this in the Witherspoons, yeah, crack on. And I'd imagine it's slightly nicer on draft as well. But yeah, I think 7.5 out of 10 is a fair mark. Solid 7.5 out of 10. And buy it if you like your stout or your porter with a little bit of a twist. And remember, beer is working class champagne.